Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, thanks for stopping by. Today we're going to be canning up some more yummy goodness. Today's recipe is also going to be a recommendation for your holiday canning. It's going to be part of my holiday canning series. We are going to be canning up salted caramel pear butter. I am an apple butter lover, and so when I saw this recipe, I thought apple butter is really hard to beat, but this sounds really delicious. I tried it and it is absolutely to die for, you guys. You definitely need it on your holiday canning gift list because it would make an amazing gift. Now we are in pear season, so now is the perfect time to make this. It's super easy to do. We're gonna let our crock pot do all of the work for us. Now the recipe comes from the Ball Mason Jars website, ballmasonjars.com. They keep changing the name of it. It was Ball Fresh Preserving, and it sounds like they've changed it to now it's ballmasonjars.com, but it is a ball recipe, and you can find it on their website. I will leave a link in the description box below. It needs very few ingredients. We need 4 pounds of pears, peeled, cored, and coarsely chopped, 1/3 of a cup of apple cider, 2 tablespoons of bottled lemon juice. A word on the lemon juice, there's been some discrepancy with apple butter regarding lemon juice, whether you needed it or not for safety. The National Center of Home Food Preservation doesn't have it in their apple butter recipe. I think Ball does use it in their recipes. Some extension offices recommend it, some don't, so it's kind of all over the board. With do we need it for safety, do we not? Pears and apples are both safe to can without it being added, so I'm not really sure why some people are adding it and some are not for apple butter and pear butter, but it is recommended here to use 2 tablespoons of bottled lemon juice. I did do that. I do recommend that you do it. It's going to add another layer of safety. The lemon does offset the sweetness and the saltiness of this, so I think it is a really good ingredient here. Whether it's added for safety or not, who knows? The experts don't agree on that. So I did add it. It was very delicious. You don't really taste it, but I think it does help to balance the sugar and the salt that's in this. The other 2 ingredients you're going to need is 2.5 cups of dark brown sugar. That's going to be our caramel part. And then of course for the salty part, we need 2 teaspoons of sea salt or kosher salt. You want to use a coarse salt here. Now, I did find that 2 teaspoons, I used sea salt, didn't have a lot of saltiness to it, so I ended up adding about 1/2 teaspoon more. But when you're done making your apple butter, just taste it and see if you feel like it needs more or if it's fine right where it is. So like I said, it's going to be super easy. It is going to take you a while to make it though. The recommendation from Ball in their recipe states that you can use a 4-quart or a 6-quart crock pot or slow cooker. I started off in my 6-quart slow cooker and ended up switching over to my 4-quart. The 6-quart was just too big. This is small batch canning. For the 4 pounds of pears, you only end up with 4 half-pint or 8-ounce jars, so it isn't a lot of product to begin with. So for those of you who are looking for small batch recipes, this is fantastic. For those of you who have families or want to do a lot of gift giving, you're going to want to double or triple this recipe. But if you're just using the 4 pounds of pears in the recipe as stated, I would highly recommend using the 4-quart crock pot as opposed to starting off in the 6-quart. The 6-quart is just too big, in my opinion and in my experience from making this. Okay guys, we are going to start by placing our 4 pounds of peeled, cored, and chopped pears into our slow cooker. To that we are going to add 1/3 of a cup of apple cider and 2 tablespoons of bottled lemon juice. We're going to put the lid on it, place it on high, and we're going to cook it on high for about 40 minutes to an hour until our pears are nice and soft. Okay guys, once your pears have softened, mine took, after my crock pot heated up, they took at least an hour. So it's just going to depend on how ripe your pears are. The more ripe they are, which I would really recommend for this recipe, using really ripe pears, it won't take as long. Obviously, I had a few that weren't as ripe as they should have been, but it's still fine. It took about an hour. So now you've got 2 options. I'm going to use my immersion blender to make it a nice puree, or you could use your food processor. All right, once you've pureed your pears, we are going to stir in 2.5 cups of dark brown sugar. That's our caramel part. And then we're also going to add 2 teaspoons of sea salt. You could use sea salt or kosher salt. You just want a coarser salt for this. And so now we are going to make sure that our crock pot is on high. We are going to add the lid diagonally across our crock pot. We want some steam to evaporate, so that's why we don't want the lid down on it. So we are going to let this cook and bubble up for 3 to 4 hours about. You want to make sure you're stirring it about every half an hour, every 30 minutes or so to make sure it doesn't stick or burn. But we're going to turn all of this goodness into a delicious salted caramel pear butter. Guys, here is my pear butter. It's nice and dark. It has cooked for about 4 hours or so. You want to cook it until it's nice and thick, obviously darkened in color. And when you take out a spoonful of it and take it away from the heat, it should remain mounded. When you take it away from the heat, you're supposed to let it sit for a minute or two, and it should remain mounded, and ours does. You can see that there's a little bit of a mound there, kind of hard to see on camera, but it is remaining mounded. So it is all set for canning. I do want to say that you're going to want to taste it. I'm sorry, not test it, but taste it. I didn't really taste the salt in mine after it had cooked. I also wanted to mention that I switched from my larger 6-quart crock pot to my 4-quart. I think a 6-quart crock pot is really too big for this recipe, so the 4-quart seemed to work better, and then it started cooking better once I put it in the smaller one. So just a little tip there. It did take a good 4 hours to get to this point. Anyway, you're gonna wanna taste it to make sure that it has enough salt to give it that salted caramel flavor. And you can always add more prior to canning it. So I think I'm gonna add another teaspoon or so of salt to mine. But at this point, we are all set for canning. Okay guys, we are ready for canning. I have 3 quarts of simmering water in the bottom of my steam canner. If you're a water bath canning, you want enough simmering water in your canner to cover your jars by 1 inch once they are in there. Again, we're doing a small batch here, so this is only going to make about 4 8-ounce jelly jars. So we are going to ladle our pear butter to 1/4 inch headspace into our jars. Modern canning guidelines state we don't need to pre-sterilize jars or lids as long as we're processing for more than 10 minutes, and we are going to be. So I just washed my lids and set them aside. I did wash my jars and I was keeping them hot in my canner. All right, once you get to about the 1/4 inch headspace, you're going to take a debubbling tool, plastic butter knife, or chopstick to release any air bubbles. So just kind of poke around your jar. If your headspace changes, you can always top off your jar with a little more of your pear butter. All right, then we're going to take a paper towel dipped in white vinegar to clean the rims of our jars. We don't want anything interfering with a good seal. We're going to center our lids. And then add our bands to fingertip tight. In the canner they go. Okay guys, I have all of my jars in my steam canner. I did end up with about 4 jars of the salted caramel pear butter. I do have my heat on high. I'm going to look for my dial gauge to get into my green zone, and then I will start my processing time. If you are water bath canning, you want to make sure that your water covers your jars by at least 1 inch. Once it starts boiling vigorously, you can start your processing time. Once you start your processing time, you want to adjust your heat just to maintain staying in your green zone on a steam canner, or just maintaining the full rolling boil during water bath canning. We're going to process for 15 minutes and then I'll bring you back. All right, guys, we are all done. I processed for 15 minutes and then let my jar sit for another 5 and took them out, and they are cooling over here. I just want to tell you, this stuff is absolutely amazing, and it is so good for gift giving because it's something a little bit different than traditional apple butter. That pear flavor is amazing if you've never made pear butter before, and then using the dark brown sugar with a little bit of salt, making it salted caramel, is just kicks it up a great notch. It's absolutely fantastic, and I hope you will give it a try for your holiday gift giving. One other tip I wanted to share is this would be perfect for pears that are more to the ripe to overripe stage. I don't think it's good for pears that are underripe. Just my opinion. I had one pear that I did include in mine that was a little less ripe than the others, and it took a while for it to soften during the cooking process. So I highly recommend using pears that are more on the ripe to overripe stage before using them. If you have any questions or comments for me, leave them for me in the comment section. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next time. Have a fantastic day.